Presidential transition, inauguration, first 100 days. That's where we are right now. The transition symbolizes and embodies the peaceful transfer of power from one president to a successor. In Trump world, an unexpected victory morphed into chaos with a power vacuum compounded by a public squabbling between the current administration and its successor over U.S. policy toward Israel, nuclear policy, and the reality and response to Russian hacking. These are the two bedrock constitutional principles, the hallmark of American democracy: peaceful transfer of power, civilian control of the military. Although during the election campaign, Trump was denounced by Clinton and Obama as unsuited to be commander-in-chief. That's a pretty telling charge. But on November 10th, the two sat down in the Oval Office, shook hands, and began the presidential transition. Only once before in American history had a president and his successor parted ways before the inaugural ceremony. That was the election of 1824, in which Andrew Jackson succeeded John Quincy Adams, each of whom had personal animus toward the other. I won't go into the details. But Adams left town before Jackson was inaugurated. There was some possibility that Obama might do the same thing, but given the fact he was a constitutional scholar, he put the country above personal pick or animosity or what have you. Nevertheless, the transition has been a rocky road. There was the transition, you can map it out and make plans, but the Trump people weren't expecting to win. So they didn't have people in place to carry out the transition, and we're still reeling from that reality in that departments are woefully understaffed. We have just now got most of the cabinet members have been confirmed. However, at the next level, the deputy secretary, undersecretary, assistant secretaries, deputy assistant secretaries, all of whom require Senate confirmation, things are pretty well stalled. Candidates are being vetted. In some cases, candidates' names have not even been put forward. They have to be vetted by the Government Ethics Office. They have to provide, they have to undergo an FBI background check, and they have to disclose their financial situation, so that all of this takes time, and it takes months before the process is completed. So in a sense, we're still in transition mode for a large part of the government. Not only was this process of cabinet selection done as kind of this public spectacle mode, I think Romney and others who were publicly possibly humiliated by not being selected. But the White House itself has been understaffed with only a handful of top aides in active mode. We had the resignation of a national security advisor thrown in. We have a situation where the press has been attacked for as an enemy of the people by the president himself. And we had a dystopian inaugural address in which American carnage was on the menu. Thankfully, the State of the Union earlier this week reflected a presidential demeanor which was to be welcomed, in which a vision was presented that was more presidential, although there was a lack of details on programs such as jobs, immigration, tax overhaul, medical care, and how to pay for them. So we're in a situation now where we have one-party government, but uncertainty as to whether the Congress and the President and his advisors can achieve consensus, particularly over the Affordable Care Act. But this is also reflected in the mixed messaging that's coming from the White House and cabinet members. Trump has weighed in on policy toward the EU and NATO and our foreign allies, and has been trumped by cabinet secretaries such as Tillerson and Mattis at Defense, and even the Vice President, who have come in supporting our alliances where Trump is emphasizing the fact that the allies aren't paying their fair share, and questioning and advancing the America First agenda. So we will have to wait and see how it all shakes out. I'm reminded of, this may be part of Trump's unpredictability strategy. He's obviously unpredictable, but can this chaos be channeled in a positive direction? That's what we're waiting to see. Reminds me of Zhou Enlai's reflection on the French Revolution when he was asked what the impact was, and he said, "It's too early to say." Well, and I think that's pretty much the situation with Trump. It's too early to say what kind of a president he will turn out to be. The State of the Union early this week demonstrated the first kind of inkling that he could be presidential. Now this is subjective, obviously, but we will just have to wait and see how his style conforms or conflicts with those of his cabinet appointees. Let me just say one word about how the government functions. You could look at Trump as the keeper of the flame in relationship to his supporters, whereas he's recruited some high-powered talent for his cabinet, particularly in the national security team. Will he give them the discretion and leeway to implement policy that resonates with American allies, that puts adversaries on guard, and most importantly, is supported by the civil service employees, the government employees who have to implement his policy? It's all very well for policy to emanate from the White House and filter down to the departments, but at the intersection of the political level and the civil service, there has to be a connection that is of mutual respect on both sides. I was a little troubled by Press Secretary's assertion that government employees should get with the program or get out. That really has no place in a press office. So, just to sum up, the mixed messages can be a real problem. The chasm between what Trump says and what his minions say is real. Some examples, Trump is talking about military force and carrying out deportations, and General Kelly is mixing the idea. Trump has blasted the EU as an alien, inefficient economic club, and Bannon has labeled it a flawed construct. Vice President Pence has emphasized the strong commitment of the U.S. and continued cooperation. Similarly with NATO, Secretary Mattis has reaffirmed American support for NATO alliances. Finally, the big question looming is whether the Republican-controlled Congress and the Republican-controlled White House can wind up on the same page in terms of implementing an agenda for the country that the president can take to the country and get a positive response. Thank you. I think that may have been